All right, everybody. Thanks for joining on today's little discussion. We're covering our small business series number 4, which is talking about conversion tracking. So I think this topic is what makes it possible for me to be a marketer, I think. Like my background is actually out of college. I was a software engineer, so it's very kind of data oriented. I never liked the idea of, Mad Men style, like sitting around like a conference room and saying like, ooh, what do people want? Trying to guess the inner workings of a consumer's mind. Digital marketing is much more quantitative, and that's the kind of work that we like to do, hence why we're in kind of performance marketing and kind of talking about these topics. So yeah, we just want to kind of cover conversion tracking. What is it? It's measuring the results of your marketing campaign, really. So, what's different from, say, Google ads or Facebook ads as opposed to traditional advertising? So that's like magazines, print, billboards, television, etc. Because we're in this digital environment, we get to learn a lot about the customer that you kind of wouldn't otherwise, and that they're not telling you explicitly. So, for example, we talk really often about the uniqueness of Google search, and that the user is telling us something really, really unique about their purchasing intent by putting a query into the search engine. And that's not really something that the user is trying to like tell people about necessarily, but it's information that we get from the user in the context of that digital environment. Similarly, in other digital environments, we get to learn about the customer and hopefully better meet their needs. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. John, what's your kind of understanding of conversion tracking? Maybe we'll start there and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. As far as my understanding of conversion tracking, I come at it more and am familiar with it via the different ad manager platforms that we work in. So primarily Google and Meta, and just understanding that we need to attach pixels to ads and ensure those are configured correctly so the data flows properly. And then beyond that, it's just a matter of interpreting the data that is tracked through the ad platforms and Google Analytics, so we can make informed decisions about the ads we run. I have to admit that my understanding of conversion tracking in general is pretty much limited to that high-level explanation that I just provided. This blog that Joe wrote really takes a deep dive into it, and I have to admit a little bit of it is, I won't say over my head, but outside of my current understanding. So, Joe, beyond that high-level overview I just provided, what can you teach me about conversion tracking here?
Yeah. So at a high level, I mean, you've got it, right? So we're gathering data about a particular user and what they're doing. The specifics around the tools that we use, whether that's kind of like the pushing data back to the Meta platform through their pixel or through Google Analytics or like any kind of Google conversion tracking. So those are kind of the tactics of how we are collecting that data. And, those things change. iOS 14 couple of years back has certainly changed the way that we track like cookies on a user. So that's data that's dropped onto a browser from a website so that, we learn certain things about the user. That world is, changing here pretty soon, and we're kind of going into like a more cookieless world. It doesn't mean that the data isn't being tracked anymore, but it just means that it's being tracked, or that data is being siloed in different places. So for example, Google is going away from cookies for conversion tracking, particularly in like Google Analytics. The latest Google Analytics 4 actually is completely cookieless, but that just means that Google's not putting that data on your browser. They're, storing it in their data warehouse in their backyard. So yeah, to kind of recap at a high level, it's collecting user and behavior information from the user who is engaged with your ad. So, one of the things, conversion and sales is clearly one of those things that we're tracking. But there's a number of other different activities on a website that you might want to track. So, hey, this particular product was viewed an add to cart thing happened. This person viewed this video. This person signed up for this newsletter. This person engaged with social media. Right. Just there's all manner of valuable things or activities that can happen on a site, and we can track all of that behavior with our tools. So the most versatile, I would say, is probably Google Analytics, because you can set up almost any kind of specific event to be tracked. So, man, if you want to say like a user clicked on this and then went to this page and then did this, like a very, very specific sequence of actions, you can actually set that up. And, most of the platforms that we work with, like Shopify, Squarespace, BigCommerce, even WordPress to a lesser degree, they all have really kind of robust standard event tracking architecture. So, the average things that a user does on an e-commerce website, those are generally well tracked. But if you have a unique use case of something that you want to track on your website, that can all get built. And we've done some of that custom work for some of our clients in the past. Let's see. I think, yeah. So I guess to contrast, one of the things that you don't get with more kind of traditional analog forms of marketing is, if you put up a billboard somewhere, you don't know how many people have seen it. You can kind of guess, right? If it's on this block and at this time, you're going to guess that so many people see it. Your Super Bowl ad is a classic example. That's how many millions of eyeballs are seeing that ad at this given time. But it's really hard to understand what you get there. So like the specific number of impressions, the specific number of traffic driven to your site. And we can tell some things, like if you run a Super Bowl ad that says, go to my website, and then you get a big spike of traffic to your website. Sometimes you can tell that kind of thing, but we have even more robust ways of tracking. So something I think that is actually not mentioned in the article is UTM tracking. So if you see all this kind of like weird stuff like appended to a URL, that's probably tracking parameters. And that's something that we use as digital marketers to better understand where our traffic is coming from. So that allows us to put in custom things in there. So like, okay, this specific ad creative drove traffic to the website at this time with this user, et cetera. So, we have tools like that. I'll probably write another article on UTM tracking in general and how to use it. So let's add that to the queue of other content that we have to produce. But that's just one example of ways that's different. Now, one of the things that we have noticed is that with the revival of the QR code, tracking traditional media types has become quite a bit better. So what you'll see is if you get a QR code, say on a billboard or a magazine or something like that, you use your phone to, kind of click through on that QR code to go to a website. And best practices for marketing is certainly to add UTM tracking parameters to that QR code. So this QR code placed here generated this traffic. And so you're starting to get this little hybrid of traditional and digital marketing kind of working together so that you can kind of have better tracking. Let's see. Anything else that you kind of want to get into on that, John?
Not so much on the additional tracking, but I guess this is another higher level question, which I already know the answer to, but I think it's really good for the users out there to hear this question. And I feel like it's something that a lot of them have. But when we're talking about tracking conversions, particularly across these advertising platforms, Joe, and this will be a little bit of red meat for you too. Can we trust when Google or Meta says, hey, this campaign, this particular ad, whatever level you're looking at it to, has produced this many conversions? Is that data trustworthy or not? Do we need to take it with a grain of salt?
Yeah, I know you're going with this, John, and this is one of my favorite topics. The fast answer is no, hell no. The longer answer is it kind of depends, right? And so actually what I'll do is reference in the show notes here is another article that we wrote on attribution, which is, attribution is a $1 trillion question, in my opinion. If we can really and for the people that don't know what attribution means, it's how do we give credit to different marketing sources as to, their value in the conversion funnel. So classic example is I'm advertising for X, Y, or Z product. I have like an Instagram ad. user views that Instagram ad, then goes onto Google, searches for the brand name, clicks on the Google ad, and then purchases something, right? So who do you credit that with? I think it's a pretty difficult question to ask. I don't think that there's actually a hard and fast answer. Even if you were to ask that person, after they made the purchase, like, hey, which of these, marketing channels do you think like influenced your purchase like the greatest? I'm not sure that, a person would be conscious of, they wouldn't say like, oh yes, I would credit 40% of my purchasing behavior to Instagram and then 60% to Google search, right? That's not how the human mind works. So the way to think about it as far as credit goes, within each ad platform, each ad platform is going to try to make itself look as good as it can. And part of that is nefarious and part of that is structural. So what I mean by that is Google will take as much credit as it can within its own channel. It's not aware of any other channels to distribute credit to. It's only aware of within its own campaigns. So if someone comes in through, say, a shopping click and then comes back in through a search click, Google knows that those two clicks happened and then a purchase happened eventually. But it doesn't know that, oh, actually the user was introduced to your brand through a Meta Instagram ad. Then they went to shopping, then to Google. So it's unaware of that whole kind of the multi-channel environment that's potentially happening. So that's kind of the structural part. The more malicious part is there are certain things that Google will take credit for. I think the classic example is brand search, right? It's going to say like, oh, look at brand search. It clearly drove like tons of conversions and the click-through rate on the ads is 50% and your return on ad spend is, 50 to 1. Woohoo. The reality is that if your brand search is Nike and somebody's trying to get to Nike.com, like they're going to find you. So, that click that you paid for probably would have happened anyways. And so, Google is going to take credit. Similarly, like Facebook doesn't have their hands clean either. They're very, very happy to, blast a lot of impressions at people at the bottom of the funnel. And when they're ready to buy something anyways, if they get, an ad in their feed, because you've been to the website before, they'll take plenty of credit for retargeting a user who's been to the site. So just because from a technical perspective, the data was collected in a certain way, doesn't mean that that's actually how to credit those channels. So on the other side of things, we also have, event and conversion tracking within Google Analytics 4. The restriction there, I would say, is primarily the fact that Google Analytics is only aware of what happens within its own ecosystem, which is on-site behavior. So Google Analytics is completely unaware of what's happening off-site, which as marketers, we're primarily working off-site. So driving people to a website, they don't really know what's going on outside over there. So the thousands or millions of impressions that you buy on Instagram, those are probably generating clicks to your website. So if you're, say, Nike and you're running a bunch of ads for Nike on Instagram, or you've got like a new product that you're launching, that's probably going to generate search queries, or people are going to type in Nike.com into their search browser and come to your website. If they don't click directly through your ad, that UTM tracking is not going to make it into their click stream. Therefore, Google Analytics is not going to be aware of the fact that that click was generated by a particular ad. So there's limitations there. Additionally, Google Analytics is completely aware of the multi-channel picture. So it's going to be aware that, hey, this person came to the website through Instagram. This guy came to the website again through Google search. It will be aware of that. And then it uses some attribution modeling to try to divvy up the credit there. But that can get complex as well. I like to think of it as blind people feeling out an elephant. So it's important to understand the way and the limitations that conversion tracking is happening through all of the different channels and to give you a sense of the whole picture of your marketing mix. So, yeah. Does that answer your question, John?
It does. So essentially, it's not perfect, but these multiple data sources and ways of tracking can bring together all of the pieces to form a relatively accurate picture in the end.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And, again, kind of going back to what the purpose of conversion tracking is and collecting data, it's so that you can make data-driven and actionable changes and optimizations to your campaigns. So, I mean, this is going to sound really, really complicated and rocket science, but marketing optimization is about spending money where you're getting something for your money and not spending money where you're not getting anything for your money, right? As the age-old marketing thing goes, or there's this age-old marketing saying that says like, I know half of my marketing budget is working. I don't know which half. That is actually a little bit less true with digital marketing because, we can see, okay, this campaign is driving this traffic and that traffic is resulting in these actions on a website. So that's the unique thing about digital marketing and the new kind of data-driven optimization approach to marketing that allows us to be really, really efficient. So yeah, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah. Any other questions, John?
No, no other questions. This is obviously a very in-depth topic, and out of all the blogs that we've written, I have to say that this one is one of the most information-packed that we have
Yep.
out there. So if you're a digital marketer and you need to brush up on conversion tracking and how all of that's done, this blog is an excellent resource. So I encourage anybody, even if you have a solid understanding of the topic, to come back to the blog and give this one a read because it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just in this conversation, I've realized that we need to produce some content about UTM tracking. So if you want to hear when we make that blog post or when we make the video for it, make sure to sign up for our email newsletter, follow us on social, and we'll keep you up to speed as best we can. So thanks everyone for listening in today.
Thank you.